What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Devil's in the Details. I'm BD, and today's topic, the 1987 cult classic, Robocop. I can't imagine how the pitch went to get the budget based on the title of this film. In retrospect, it really doesn't sound that silly, but in 1987, pitching the idea in a boardroom to a bunch of executives and asking for $13 million to make a movie based on a robotic policeman?
I'd buy that for $1.
I mean, come on, what's next? Robo-plumber? Robo-janitor? Cleaning up the school so you don't have to. Even Orion Pictures, who ended up doing the distribution, said that they could never sell it with that title.
You serious?
That it was a stupid title that sounded like a kid's movie, and probably why every American director asked to direct the film said no. They didn't want that title on their resume. But in the end, the title stuck. And in hindsight, the title tells you exactly what the movie is. But they still couldn't find an American director to do it, so they sent the script to Paul Verhoeven, and he said no, and threw out the script.
I threw it on the ground. You must think I'm a joke.
It was Verhoeven's wife that picked up the script and read it and agreed that it wasn't Shakespeare. But if he took the time to read it carefully, he discovered that it had many layers to be explored.
Peel the onion.
At its core, Robocop is a cyberpunk action flick, a sci-fi western, but it's also stuffed with a myriad of different themes including media influence, gentrification, corruption, authoritarianism, greed, privatization, capitalism, identity, dystopia, and human nature.
Gee whiz, so many things happen all at once.
The movie is saturated with all of these themes. It's those layers that the director brings to the table that help flesh out the world of Robocop. Another thing that Verhoeven likes to do is taking a well-known performer with an established persona and tweaking it. He applies this method when searching for the film's cast. Both Kurtwood Smith and Ronny Cox were cast against type. Cox until then had primarily been cast in nice guy roles, and Smith had mostly been playing intellectual characters. Even Nancy Allen, who plays Murphy's partner, Officer Ann Lewis, had previously been mostly cast as shallow, bitchy teenage characters.
This isn't over. This isn't over by a long shot.
You're out of the prom, Hargensen.
Peter Weller, who was cast to play Robocop, was not Verhoeven's first choice. A few other actors were favored for the part, such as Michael Ironside, Rutger Hauer, and even Arnold Schwarzenegger were considered for the role, but the production team quickly realized that because of the already bulky Robocop suit, they would need to find someone a little smaller, and someone who could still act and convey pathos with only the bottom half of their face. And now, of course, you can't imagine anyone else playing the part. Weller owned it. A huge risk the filmmakers took was killing the hero 25 minutes into the film. Verhoeven said it himself. He likened Weller's character Murphy to Jesus and the Smith character Boddicker to Satan. He said that you couldn't have a resurrection without first having a crucifixion, and Murphy's made Jim Caviezel's crucifixion in The Passion of the Christ look like a walk in the park by comparison. Verhoeven even has Robocop walk on water like he's an American Jesus, if Jesus was a gunslinger. One of the reasons why Robocop remains relatable despite being turned into mostly machine is that he retains Murphy's soul. Even with all the steel, robotic prosthetics, and computerized gadgetry, even though they wiped his memory, Murphy still manages to shine through thanks to Weller's performance.
I can feel them. But I can't remember them.
Verhoeven drew inspiration from two key movies, The Day the Earth Stood Still and Metropolis. There's so many parallels between Maria, the robot in Metropolis, and Robocop. Weller was the one who came up with the quick bird-like movements for Robocop. And because the costume was so restrictive in movement, Weller hired Moni Yakum, the head of the movement department at Juilliard, so that they could create an appropriate way for him to move while wearing the suit. Originally, they wanted him to be able to move around very quickly, like a snake, but given the bulk of the suit, that just wasn't possible. So they used the art of mime instead to create Robocop's movements. The Robocop suit was created by Rob Bottin by sculpting a full-size suit, and they had a ton of problems creating it, which led to many arguments, some of them so heated that it almost caused the entire production to be scrapped.
It's all falling apart here, and we're really thinking of pulling the plug on this movie.
Because of all the delays, the suit, which was supposed to be on set 3 weeks prior to shooting the first Robocop scene, missed its deadline. The suit only showed up on the same day it was scheduled to begin shooting, and it took them 11 hours to get Weller prepped and into the suit. Weller was not happy. All the rehearsing he had done with Joachim went straight out the window. Because his mobility was so restricted, the suit was so constricted that he could barely move. He couldn't even walk in the suit. Although the movie is set in a futuristic Detroit, it was almost entirely shot in Dallas and Pittsburgh. In Dallas, temperatures rose as high as 100 degrees. Weller later revealed that during filming, he was losing 3 pounds a day due to sweat loss while wearing the Robocop suit.
Peter was literally losing pounds of weight every day out of water dehydration. He was constantly having to be hydrated.
Weller's personal assistant, Todd Trotter, was responsible for keeping the actor cool in between takes with electric fans and, when available, large ducts connected to freestanding air conditioning units. The suit eventually had a fan built into it. And of course, the film also incorporates one of my favorite cinematic arts, stop-motion animation. Phil Tippett, the genius behind so many film classics like the Tauntaun sequences in the Star Wars movies, was the man in charge of bringing Ed 209 to life and even managed to slide in not only a believable performance, but also some physical comedy. Ed 209 was a satire and mirrored American cars at the time. It was big and bulky and didn't work. He was the 6000 SUX in a sense. The stop-motion animation technique wasn't only applied to bring Ed 209 to life. There's also a couple of shots where Tippett had to create and animate a Robocop puppet. Verhoeven was very much hands-on when it came to the stop-motion animation sequences of Ed 209, who sometimes acted out the robot's movements himself. In the first iteration of Ed 209, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with his look. Something was off. They eventually figured that it was the front grille. It made him look like he was smiling. So they flipped the grill upside down, and that simple little tweak instantly made him more menacing. Robocop was released on July 17, 1987, and was very well received both by critics and moviegoers. It garnered nearly $54 million at the box office from a $13 million budget. The film was so successful that it spawned an entire franchise that included merchandise, 2 sequels, a television series, a remake, 2 animated TV series, a television miniseries, video games, and a number of comic book adaptations and crossovers. Recently announced by original writer Ed Neumeyer is another Robocop film which he says will be more of a continuation of the first film as opposed to a reboot.
What did you do to me? What have you done to me?
I'm definitely looking forward to that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thanks again for tuning in, liking, sharing, and subscribing. A big thank you to our patrons, as always. Which was your favorite Robocop film? Or was it a comic book or video game that introduced you to the franchise? Please let me know in the comments section down below. Thank you, we love you, good night.
But, you know, America deserves that. It's a land of private property where everything has to be owned, serial numbered, protected, and controlled. We're addicted to a pretty bad drug called capitalism, and until we get over that, we're going to need police in the way that they are.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.